After everything that has unfolded in this season, one final habit often remains. Not a belief, not a question, a subtle posture, the posture of holding things together. This episode is about what happens when even that posture relaxes. Not because something has been resolved, but because there is nothing left that requires cohesion. For most of life, holding things together feels necessary. You hold together responsibilities. You hold together relationships. You hold together plans. You hold together yourself. Even when effort softens and interference fades, there can still be a background sense that something must be maintained. A continuity, a stability, a coherence across time. This habit runs deep. Holding things together is not always conscious. It often feels like attentiveness, like care, like maturity. But underneath, it is the assumption that life will fall apart without supervision, that without tension, things will scatter. Throughout this season, many layers of that supervision have already loosened. Effort no longer needs to be forced. Responsibility no longer needs ownership. Care no longer needs obligation. Time no longer needs pressure. Rest no longer needs relief. Life moves without being managed. And yet, there can still be a sense that all of this must be kept in place. That understanding must be integrated. That clarity must be stabilized. That something could slip if attention drifts. This episode speaks directly to that assumption. Nothing is being held together, and nothing ever was. To see this clearly, it helps to look at how cohesion actually happens. Life already coordinates itself. Systems interact. Patterns form. Adjustments occur. The body maintains balance without instruction. Relationships shift without being engineered. Workflows adapt without central planning. Cohesion is emergent. It is not applied. The sense of holding things together comes from the center. It imagines itself as the thread connecting moments, the thing that ensures continuity, the thing that prevents collapse. But the center never actually performed that function. It narrated it. When the center dissolves, cohesion does not disappear. It becomes visible as inherent. Life continues to cohere because it is relational, not because someone is maintaining it. This can feel unsettling at first. People may notice, I'm not trying to keep myself aligned anymore. I'm not monitoring whether things make sense. I'm not checking whether I'm doing this right. And they may wonder, is something missing? Should I be holding on to something? The answer is no. What has fallen away is unnecessary tension. Holding things together often disguises fear. Fear that if attention relaxes, disorder will appear. Fear that if vigilance drops, something important will be lost. But disorder does not appear when holding stops. What appears is movement, adjustment, reorganization. This is especially clear in emotional life. With a center, emotions are often managed to preserve coherence. You try to feel consistently. You try to respond predictably. You try to remain stable. Without holding, emotions are allowed to vary. Some days are open. Some days are dull. Some days are heavy. None of this needs correction. Cohesion is not emotional consistency. It is responsiveness. The same applies to understanding. With a center, understanding must be retained. Insights must be remembered. Clarity must be preserved. Without holding, understanding comes and goes. It appears when useful. It fades when not. Nothing breaks. Life does not depend on conceptual continuity. This is often where people fear regression. They think, if I don't hold on to this, I'll go backward. But backward only exists in relation to a story of progress. Without that story, there is only movement, adjustment, response. Nothing needs to be carried forward. What mattered was not the insight. It was the absence of interference. And interference does not return simply because attention relaxes. Holding things together also shows up in identity. Even after identity loosens, people may try to remain a certain way. Calm, clear, spacious. They may subtly correct themselves when they don't feel aligned. This recreates identity in a refined form. Nothing needs to be maintained. You do not need to embody clarity. You do not need to live consistently. You do not need to reflect understanding. Life does not require coherence from you. It produces coherence on its own. This also affects how people relate to disruption. With a center, disruption feels dangerous. It threatens continuity. Without holding, disruption is simply change. Things rearrange. Patterns shift. Life adapts. There is no need to stabilize against it. This is particularly noticeable during stress. Without holding, stress is not escalated by self-monitoring. There is response without panic, adjustment without collapse. Stress passes more quickly because it is not amplified by fear of breakdown. Nothing left to hold together also changes how people relate to order. Order is no longer imposed. It emerges where needed. Structures appear. Structures dissolve. This is not chaos. It is fluid organization. Another subtle shift happens around control. With a center, control feels like responsibility. Without holding, control becomes situational. You intervene when intervention is required. You step back when it is not. There is no need to keep control active at all times. This makes action more precise, less forceful, more effective. A common misunderstanding here is thinking that without holding, life becomes careless. But carelessness comes from disengagement, not from relaxation of control. Without holding, engagement becomes cleaner. Attention is available. Response is direct. Another trap is trying to stay relaxed. People notice the absence of holding and try to preserve it. They monitor themselves for tension. This recreates holding in a subtler form. Nothing needs to be protected. Relaxation is not a state to maintain. It is what remains when effort drops. Nothing left to hold together also affects how people relate to meaning. Meaning no longer needs to unify experience. Moments don't need to connect. Life doesn't need a theme. Things happen. They end. New things begin. This does not fragment life. It frees it. You may notice that stories lose importance. Not because life is empty, but because it doesn't need to be narrated. This can feel disorienting for a while. People are used to tracking themselves through time, used to knowing who they are becoming. Without holding, becoming is no longer monitored. Life moves without a storyline. This does not erase memory. It removes identification. Past events remain. They simply don't anchor identity. Another place holding dissolves is in decision aftermath. With a center, decisions must be justified, evaluated, proven correct. Without holding, decisions complete themselves. If adjustment is needed, it happens. If not, life moves on. There is no need to keep checking. This reduces regret, not because outcomes are always good, but because nothing needs to be defended. Nothing left to hold together also allows contradiction. You can act one way today and another tomorrow. You don't need to reconcile them. Consistency is no longer required for legitimacy. This can feel freeing. It can also feel unfamiliar, but it is deeply human. Life does not demand cohesion. It responds moment by moment. Patterns appear where useful. They dissolve when not. At this point, many people expect a final realization, something that ties everything together. But tying things together is exactly what no longer needs to happen. This episode does not conclude the season. It releases it. There is nothing to integrate, nothing to sustain, nothing to carry forward. Functioning without a center does not lead to a perfected life. It leads to a life that does not need to be perfected. Nothing is missing. Nothing is unresolved. Nothing is being held together. Life continues. Responsive, ordinary, unsupervised. And that is not a destination. It is simply where the habit of holding has ended.